New defense coordinator Todd Grantham has kicked off the 2026 recruiting class with a new commit, and new basketball coach Steve Lutz has his first signature top 10 win in Gallagher-Iba Arena.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Alldeo State. Today, we get to jump right into the conversation of Cowboy basketball. Whether you like, love, or hated the idea of Steve Lutz being the next basketball coach at Oklahoma State, you have to enjoy the fact that the Cowboys just took down the number 9 ranked team in the country. This is the same number 9 ranked team that had a very, very phenomenal effort against the number 5 ranked Houston Cougars without their leading scorer. Their leading scorer comes back to make a trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and we allowed him just to make 11 points. So he didn't really make that much of a difference. Their top scorer, who averages well over 17 points a game, was, by all intents and purposes, shut down for most of the night. They seemed to struggle offensively due to some of the things that we were doing on defense, the switching and the ability to have Abou Ousmane get hot from beyond the arc that had them extend their defense, obviously, to levels that were kind of uncomfortable, and it provided us some lanes to exploit down low. Guys, I think Arturo Dean, I want to say it's his coming out party. It's definitely his best game thus far as a Cowboy. But this whole ball game, it didn't seem likely, especially when you take into consideration the last 2 ranked teams that we played, we lost to by a combined 70 points. So the idea that Oklahoma State was going to get a signature win this season seemed somewhat far away from being a legitimate possibility. Yet here we are. Again, Abou Ousmane gets hot from outside, has 3 3-pointers to go alongside 25 points. He was really a difference maker in the game, none more so than Arturo Dean. Arturo Dean really had some of the biggest moments, in my personal opinion, of the game. Khalil Brantley having a couple technical fouls. Obviously, you would like that not to happen, but both of them weren't all that big of a deal. The second one was simply just for walking through the huddle. Now, it doesn't appear as though words were exchanged, so it's a little hanky-panky from the refs there. But nonetheless, this was a great game, and this was precisely what we needed as a fan base to rally around Steve Lutz, because there have been people that have been very down on the Steve Lutz hire throughout the course of the season. My perspective has been, I just wanted him to take care of Gallagher-Iba Arena in year 1. And not only has he done that, but now he's done that with a signature win against the top 10 team with their leading scorer back on the court for them. Bryce Thompson added 11 points and found a way to be kind of instrumental in making this thing kind of make sense. Marcellus Chichi Avery gets in double digits with 10 more points. He continues to be very, very big off of the bench. Steve Lutz, with a signature W, might get some people off of his back a little bit because he won at home. We now have like an 11-3 record in Gallagher-Iba with a top 10 W, with the leading returning scorer coming back, with a multiple tech fouls by Khalil Brantley, with some role players, not really getting as many minutes as typical. You have Robert Jennings getting 15 minutes. Jamyron Keller continues to be in between a role player and somebody that we can rely upon, not only just for minutes, but when somebody gets in some foul trouble situations. This isn't the deepest team in the world. This isn't necessarily the most talented team in the world, but now this is a team that has a signature win. Now this is a team that has found a way to protect Gallagher-Iba Arena, and that was my biggest worry coming into the season was, we hired Steve Lutz kind of late. We got the guys into the portal kind of late. I mean, heck, we even got into the portal kind of late. And we obviously targeted a bunch of defensive guys that, that we're going to have the maturity to kind of help in what is a rebuild. And part of that maturity is when you get your face smashed in on the road versus KU by 34 points, having a response by coming home and taking on another top 10 program in Iowa State was absolutely massive. And we all most likely assumed that with Iowa State not having their best player available and their number 2, they were going to get dominated by Houston. But that didn't happen. They had 2 of their top players out, and they almost beat Houston. They get their top player back, come to Oklahoma State, and we made life absolutely hellacious for them, which is why they were only able to put up 68 points. And the 74 points put up by the Cowboys was obviously a breath of fresh air because we didn't get to that point against KU. We didn't get to that point against Texas Tech. We barely got there for Texas Christian, and that should have been a W. But the games that we win or give ourselves an opportunity in, we've scored over 70 points more often than not. So offensively, we did enough to get this huge W. And I think what this does is, again, it gets some of the negative Nancy's off of Steve Lutz's back. My only complaint for basketball this year has been the blowout losses. I don't mind the losses per se, especially in a rebuilding year with brand new pieces, brand new players, brand new coaches, so on and so forth. It's just been getting beat by 20, 25, 30. That has been somewhat frustrating. But as a fan of Oklahoma State University, you have to appreciate the fact that he respected that court. He respected the fact that for it to get back to the Eddie Sutton levels, you have to have teams absolutely fear coming into Gallagher-Iba Arena. And with this signature W and the record that we have at home this year, coming into next season, that is going to be something that's part of conversations. We do not want to play Oklahoma State in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's going to be worth X amount of points from their fans or in the stands. It's going to be worth X amount just from their rotational capabilities and who they're going to implement into the lineup and who's going to be off of the bench and the manipulation that Steve Lutz could potentially have next season that could change the perception of Oklahoma State from a recruiting perspective. If you have an abysmal home record and you do decent on the road, yeah, that's a good look to some degree. But in my opinion, you got to have more of the Bryce Thompsons for it to make the most amount of difference. Of course, we just talked about the other day what Jaylen Montanati would mean. Because he's an Oklahoma kid, because his dad played at Oklahoma State, you got to have some of these dudes that it naturally just means a little bit more for on top of the pieces that you brought in via the transfer portal. We are going to have some of these guys coming back for another season next year, unless something crazy happens in the portal. But it appears as though you're going to have a decent nucleus returning. Now you're going to have a full season of recruiting with the Oklahoma State and the Big 12 brand at your disposal. Not to mention the fact that you now have a sales pitch that coming to Gallagher-Iba means something, playing on that court means something. And as a university, we appreciate that so much that in Steve Lutz's first year, he found a way to have an 11-3 home record, which could only equal us being exciting and us as a fan base, at least for one time, one game, if you're looking for a reason or you've been searching for a reason to show up on senior night. Now you have it. Protecting Gallagher-Iba was priority number one. He has done that. Like, there's absolutely no denying the fact that Steve Lutz has done something that Mike Boynton was never able to do. And that was take advantage of the home court and make teams fear coming into Stillwater, Oklahoma to play a game. That seems to be kind of turning a corner now. And hopefully it is reciprocal by the fan base. And we get up for senior night and we try to make it as loud and chaotic and crazy just to show the appreciation for this team that came in knowing it was going to be a rebuild, knowing you're going into what has been the most difficult conference in the country year after year after year. They walked into an inopportune situation. They had to have known that it was going to be a difficult proposition to get where we are right now. Protecting Gallagher-Iba, that was number one for me. He's done that. You have a signature win. You've shown multiple times this year we have the capabilities to take down some of the teams. So now we need to show up as fans for senior night and get loud and show them and the guys that could potentially be returning that we see what you're doing, we appreciate it, and we want to show you that we appreciate it with more butts in the seats. Perhaps that could help with retention of the roster. Speaking of getting help, do not stress unnecessarily with tax season right around the corner here. Intuit TurboTax is here to remind you that you do not need to worry, wait, stress as much anymore with Intuit TurboTax. Dealing with all of the piles of paperwork and the frustrating forms that are always accompanied alongside of it, it's unnecessary. Get rid of the extra stress, the extra worrying, waiting, wondering with your tax expert at TurboTax. It is super easy. You can upload your forms to the TurboTax expert who is going to be matched to your unique tax situation. The expert, who is backed by the latest technology, will check millions of data points for 100% accuracy. They'll give you real-time updates on their progress so you don't have to worry about it. And you're going to get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day normally without stressing. Get rid of the worrying, the waiting, the wondering. Get with Intuit TurboTax today with this tax season in mind. Get the most back. Get an expert with TurboTax.com. This is only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Get with an expert for you and your finances by going to TurboTax.com to have your taxes done right and alleviate all of the unnecessary stress in your life. The Oklahoma State Cowboys have their first 2026 commit. Todd Grantham is obviously kind of getting things started because when you look at Jaylen Stewart, the 6'3", 230-pound defensive end edge from Pearland, Texas, which is a little bit south of the Houston area, this is the quintessential guy that used to be designated as a tweener that is, I don't know, going to be able to help implement the new system, the new changes, the new style. Having that Chendavian Bradley, Rashad Bradley, Malik Charles individual that can kind of flex and he'll do a little bit of everything is going to be encompassed by Jaylen Stewart. Sometimes it's not about the rating. He is a 3-star. Sometimes it's about the teams that are in on him. And Utah was in on Jaylen Stewart very early, one of the earliest offers that he had received, next to a decent number of teams in the Tulsa kind of realm. Then SMU was involved. Illinois is given offers. Arizona State. Then you've got Auburn involved. They got USC involved. And now you've got Oklahoma State, and he wants to be a Cowboy. The Pearland, Texas connection could be absolutely huge for us because down in the Houston area hasn't really been a fertile recruiting area for Oklahoma State. I would argue that there's some talent in the Houston area that may have been overlooked at certain times within Oklahoma State. And we just recently talked about that there's clearly a little bit of a shift when it comes to not only the recruiting capabilities with the Cowboy coaching staff, but the transfer portal names that we're getting to come to Stillwater and have interest and put us in the top 3 and end up, committing to transfer to Oklahoma State. It is a byproduct, all of the NFL and SEC success that most of these coaches have had. And this is a really good scenario for Oklahoma State because I think it does accentuate the fact that whether we're going to go with a 3-4 or 4-3 is the base defense, we want versatility still yet in that outside spot. We've been, gifted the gift that is Colin Oliver to fulfill that role for a couple of years now. So we have a pretty decent understanding of what it's supposed to look like when somebody puts in their hand in the dirt, as opposed to somebody who's trying to get out to cover the outsides. And whether this be a 4-eye or a true 9 technique, he could put his hand in the dirt. He could do a 4-point technique. He could also kind of flex and stand up. He has the ability to tote the rock on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, whenever you're talking about somebody that's 6'3", 230 pounds, that is the Trent Howland style of scenario that you do not want to mess with. So if he can tote the rock offensively, we know what he can do defensively. This previous season, he had well over 50 tackles. He had double-digit, I think it was 11 sacks. Tackles for loss is almost even double that. So the production is there. The level of competition that you want him to be at is obviously there. It's in a very, very recruiting-rich area in the state of Texas. So to see us go all the way down to Pearland to take a chance on an individual that could get recruited to play either side of the ball, that could get recruited to play just defensive end or just to play linebacker. I think some of the flexible versatility that we're providing or we're offering is what is very alluring to him. And once again, when you have the Mike Gundy direction for Todd Grantham to essentially run his own thing, his own way, do his own recruiting, get into living rooms, do your evaluations of your transfer portal guys. This is going to be perfect for Mike Gundy to kind of be able to take a step back and see in the recruiting landscape from a high school perspective, what do we need to be paying attention to? And I think one of the biggest things here is you got to have some contribution from some guys pretty early, or it is going to become difficult to keep them on campus forever. And I think you're seeing that to some degree in football, but it's going to be exacerbated even more with the transfer portal and the NIL. Now, of course, when you start to get this, the monetary compensation where the universities can essentially, share 21-ish million across all the sports, perhaps that potentially changes the way that we view the high school recruiting landscape. But again, for somebody to have the level of offers, the Auburns, the Arizona States, the USCs, and the Arizonas of the world, and he chooses to be a Cowboy, this should get us excited about whatever Todd Grantham, Doug Meacham, Ryan Osborne, Cap Deedy, Jules Montanar, Ryan McNamara, all of these guys carry a big stick when it comes to recruiting because of the stops they've been able to be at previously, because of the names they've put in the NFL, like Corey Patterson and Theron H. Those definitely carry a lot of weight, but the fact that Oklahoma State has a standard, and Oklahoma State did not live up to that standard. And we need guys to come in fairly quickly to help us get us back to where the standard is supposed to be. We're not going to be pinpointing individuals that require 2, 3, 4 years of buildup before they're able to get on the field. So the old days of Oklahoma State recruiting are obviously changing a little bit. And the fact that this young man, Mr. Jaylen Stewart, has offers from all of these Big Ten and SEC schools alongside the Big 12 schools, to me accentuates the fact that the star that's being associated with him at the moment is not indicative of the talent that he will become. He's going to have the capability to start at a Power 4 level pretty quickly. Whenever you factor in body by glass, that could make that an even more realistic scenario much quicker. And this season, we already mentioned the Rashad Bradley, Malik Charles, and Shandavian Bradley, but you also have Kyron Duhon coming over from UTEP. That was one of the most sought-after defensive end in the country that could have some versatility to slide over. So whether we're going to have a 3-man front, a 4-man front, and we're going to be able to kind of interchange between those, that is clearly something that I think makes the most amount of sense. And if you go back and look at Todd Grantham's 3-4 defenses in the NFL, we've got a number of guys that can fulfill those kind of roles. And then you've also got guys like, Jaleel that are going to factor in. Deshaun Brown is going to factor in on the other side of the ball. I'm pretty comfortable where we are with defensive ends for the most part, and even defensive tackles. I like where we're heading, and I think this is another good indication of just that. A good indication on where Cowboy baseball is going to happen after this evening, as we kind of have our last tune-up game before Murderers Row. And when we're talking about Murderers Row, that is, of course, before we give way after the game this evening to take on Tennessee, Mississippi State, and, of course, the power that is Texas A&M. Without this game this evening, perhaps you would have a little bit more trepidation, but this is a game that we need. This is a game that I feel like we know we should win after a couple, successful games against UT Arlington. This is yet another Texas opponent that should have us ready to rock and roll. Abilene Christian is pretty comparable. But what is the middle week rotation going to look like? This could be a game where we see some of that, whether it's going to be a Drew Blake to be a midweek starter. I think a lot of us would like to see what Brennan Phillips has kind of developed into. Ryan Ure is still available and a massive arm that we potentially could get some more out of. And then, of course, you still have some position players that could get some more opportunities. Brock Thompson seemed to make the most of it out of his opportunities when he's gotten in there. Bo Sylvester, we need to find a way to get him implemented in the lineup a little bit more often. I think the same could be said about somebody like a Charlie Carter. So what we find out today is going to give us a very good heads up on the SEC schedule that we definitely have coming. This is Murderer's Row. When you're playing three of the top teams in the country, top teams in the SEC, that's going to give you an even better barometer of where you currently sit. The loss to Clemson, it doesn't feel good. The loss to Texas, it doesn't taste good. The loss to Texas State, it don't smell good, feel good, taste. There's nothing positive about that. So a win over Abilene Christian this evening could cancel some of that out, puts us above 500. And then we have the Murderer's Row to look forward to that would catapult your RPI, strength of schedule, ranking, or whatever the case may be. If you go 3-0 against Tennessee, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, we should be looking towards super regionals as the expectation once again. And the Cowgirls, the expectation is to continue to keep up the fight to possibly win a regular season Big 12 title. But worst case scenario, this does help with the determination on what the seeding is going to be for not only the Big 12s, but the national seed. As it sits right now, it appears as though the Cowgirls will sneak in with around a 7 seed. And depending on what region they get put in, I'm not all that worried about that. This is yet another conversation of the Cowgirls have to string back-to-back style of games together. This is an opportunity to do that. And, yeah, you got to love what J.C. Hoyt's doing. You got to love that a good number of these girls return next season. You got to love that we have the ability to do anything and to beat anybody. We just got to string multiple phenomenal games together. That's the only thing that she has not accomplished yet thus far this season. And it's all about getting hot at the right time in every single sport, right? Even more so to some degree in basketball and baseball. So if you get rid of the bad losses now and you start stringing together 3, 4, 5, 6 wins in a row as you kind of roll into the Big 12 tournament, regardless of what you do or do not do there, that's simply just going to help whatever the seeding is by the NCAA tournament. That's all this is about. Getting to the tournament, having a good enough seed to kind of make some noise. J.C. Hoyt has accomplished all of that. And the fact that you've got Staley Hurd, it's only a sophomore, and Jada Wooten is only a freshman. Macy Heward is only a sophomore. Micah Gray's a junior that has the ability to come back. You've got Lena Girardi coming in as one of the top players in the country. Yeah, pretty exciting time. So hopefully the Cowboys feel good and get a W as they get ready for Murderer's Row. Cowgirls, you've got to have those degrees of separation between you and everybody else. There's got to be the haves and the have-nots, the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12. There's got to be a degree of separation. And the bottom of the league hasn't really had that from us. So this is a good moment for JC and the Cowgirls to get exactly that. All righty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Go ahead and hit the like button. Hit the dislike button if you hated it. That's okay, too. More importantly, my podcast and people out there, do what you do. Go hit the stars. Leave the reviews. I appreciate all of y'all. That's all we're